Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog
Oh, hey,
Banter. I'm your
Abram.
boy Abram. Oh, hi.
Hey,
Hi Tucker.
you were saying hello to me, so I was
Hi.
responding.
It's nice.
I'm
It's
part of everyone.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. And I like this because you're throwing me off my rhythm a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of familiar at this point, the rhythm with which
Mm-hmm.
I introduced the video. But this is a new year.
Yeah.
It's
New rhythm.
a new year, new rhythm. Not really a new me.
New rhythm. Heaven groove.
That's actually true.
Coming out this year.
That's actually true. Tucker, today, here as we start 2026,
Mm-hmm.
we are.
This is our first recording in 2026, actually.
That's true.
Yeah.
We finished half of the decade, which is
That is, yeah.
which is crazy beans, right? We're into
Wow.
the back half of the 2020s, and so we want to take an opportunity here to sit down and do some improper, poor
Yes.
data
Yes.
analysis
Mm-hmm.
and conduct a shoddy survey
Mm-hmm.
to determine the collective use favorite games of the 2020s so far. And so what we did is we went to our friends, of which we have few, and we got some lists, and I think we have about 27 or
Yeah.
some odd
Which is, I think that's
submissions.
most people who play video games.
Yeah, I think so. That's about like 1/10 millionth of the amount of people playing Steal Your Brain Rot last year.
That's so true. I was gonna say something along the lines of that's like that's like a quarter of the people that can play in one mag game.
That's also good.
But
But we got these lists. We got 27
or
different.
Fortnite if you're
Or
if you're
Fortnite.
if you're
If you're
so
nasty.
inclined.
If you're nasty. So we have these lists. Everyone submitted roughly 10 games. Again, we're not
Yeah.
data scientists.
This is shoddy
here.
as hell.
And then we counted them. We did a little tabulation, and
Mhm.
we have in front of us the most frequently responded with games, and we've got
Yeah.
14 of them that had over 4 votes.
Mhm.
One of them had as many as 11 votes. And
That's
so we want to
amazing.
talk over this
Yeah.
list. We want to talk over sort of the significance of these games, how these games maybe touch us. We would never offer such opportunity to the poll responders, so we just have their data. We don't have
Yeah.
their feelings.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to talk over these games, talk over how we're feeling about this decade for games overall,
Yeah.
and kind of where we've been, where we're going. And we'll
Yeah.
also share our personal list, because
We will.
of these 14 games that got the most votes, only 2 of them I put in my personal
Yeah.
10
I think I
ballot.
have 4.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So Tucker,
I'm twice as mainstream as you.
that's true. It's actually funny because I'm way more mainstream than you in reality of gaming taste. You
Hmm.
played not only like 3 times more games than I did last year, but I don't know what 85% of the games we played last year even are.
Yeah.
But
Actually, I want to frame this around one thing, because we start this off and we say it's shoddy.
List.
We only have a few responses. I mean, that's true. 27 is not a lot. I wish we'd gotten some more, but we're working with what we've got. But I actually do think that the list that we have compiled is probably pretty close
Yes.
to what it would be even if we had 5,000 responses. And it goes to show that even with the small sample size of mostly our community, I do think that a lot of these games just really resonated deeply with people.
Yes.
I think that at least these 14 would have been in the top 25 or something like that. Maybe there would have been some things that popped up with a little bit more breadth. There certainly are some things that are genre-wise, things that our community is not as much into. You're not going to see a lot of live service games on here. Games like Valorant, Marvel Rivals, Fortnite, Arc Raiders. These are the defining games of this decade so far, but they didn't show up on our list. But for the most part, I think that even with a small sample size, we were able to kind of garner a really solid list of games that I think, if you pay attention, are quite obviously the games that have connected with people the most. But again, even within our small group, it's like these are what rise to the top. And so it actually is maybe more emblematic of a larger poll size than even though we don't actually have that large poll size to work with.
Somehow, in surveying about 2,000 people, we were able to come up with a list of 14 very mainstream, very popular games somehow.
That is true. Yeah.
We also, though, a friend of the show, Brendan, check out The Crawl.
Yeah.
You put out feelers in his community for games, and they responded with things including Zaku actors and all kinds of other, I was going to say dumb bullshit, but that's probably not nice. These are probably very intriguing games.
Someone responded with Armored Core 4. That did not come out in the 2020s. Also, someone replied with
7, right?
6 is the last one. So yes, but no.
Armored Core 6-7.
Someone also replied with Final Fantasy VII Remake plus Rebirth, and I think that's stupid. Pick a lane.
Someone also responded to you with a short hike, which is not eligible by simple merit of not coming out in the 2020s. That was the only rule here.
Yes.
That was the only rule here. I did self-impose a rule. Mm-hmm. Again, just skewing data all over the place. I didn't put any remakes or remasters in my list.
Sure. I just didn't either, but not because it was a rule for me, I don't think.
I would have had both Metroid Prime Remaster and Last of Us Part 1 in my favorite games of the decade had I been counting them, but they belong to other decades. But Tucker, let's get into this list here. I think there's some intriguing stuff.
Sure.
Let's start with the lower responded.
Yeah. We've got a pool of 6 games that have all gotten 4 votes out of the 27 people that responded.
Yeah.
Do we want to go one by one, or we just want to talk about it as a pool?
Let's just list out this group here, because obviously we didn't rank them because they got the same amount of votes. So only God knows really how they should be ranked. I mean, I know how they should be ranked, but we won't get into that. We got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. We got Metaphor ReFantazio. We got Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. We got Astrobot, and we got The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty intriguing slate of games. Those are all Game of the Year nominees.
That's correct, actually. Yeah, actually, I think all on this list but 1 or 2 actually are not Game of the Year nominees.
Yeah, true.
Out of these 14.
Yeah.
Which again goes to show, and obviously it's like, all right, popularity, that kind of thing. It's like there's a lot of crossover in this stuff, and then for the most part, I think TGA nominees. They largely get it right.
Let me say this about this group of games here. I said something to you that you didn't. You had an aversion to.
Okay. Well, what's new?
I said the Final Fantasy VII Remake project as a wide entity ought to be together and ought to be higher up on this list. Now you disagree, and I think fun in a fair way because those are 2 discrete games.
They're different games, yeah. They came out at different times. Different people working on them.
Yeah, but they're 2 parts of the same whole. There's 2 parts of a 3-part whole, and I think that it's fair to say that the...
Oh man, I really love the Super Mario Bros. Project on the NES. The 3 games.
But
shut the fuck up.
But that's willfully misinterpreting the point, because this is taking Final Fantasy VII, this big idea from the 90s, this seminal game, and reimagining it.
I agree.
Across 3 very closely related games, and so I just think it's.
Well, you don't know. You haven't seen the 3rd part.
Could be. That's true. Yeah, could be. So it could have nothing to do with Final Fantasy VII, but I think that's very cool. That ultimately, I think that these remake Rebirth games have done what alongside like Persona, what a lot of people are accusing Expedition 33 of doing, of being like the RPG that got the RPGs mainstream again.
Definitely,
but I have to say, for me personally, as much as I love Expedition, I think I was only as interested to try Expedition as I was really because of these Final Fantasy VII games. Yeah. I think they're actually quite remarkable, and totally. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it's fair to say that this is like maybe the most meaningful and successful game remake project ever.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I think it's also, it's probably the highest budget. It's definitely like the highest profile.
Yeah.
I like actually the fact that both of these games are on there. And what I will say is the reason why I am a fan of them in the way that I am, the reason why I'm happy to see both of them on here, is the reason why I think they should be included separately. Is that, yes, they are part of a greater story that is reinterpreting or readapting an older work, but they're very different games, structurally, pacing wise. Like the combat is similar, the characters are similar, but the world of the first Final Fantasy VII Remake versus the world of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are so different that that's actually what impresses me most about this project. Is they understood that Midgar's such an interesting place. Let's focus in on that, make that a comparatively more linear, more set-piece driven JRPG, but it's like more in line with a traditional third-person action game. And I actually really liked that. And then when you leave Midgar, which is 5 or 6 hours into the original Final Fantasy VII, it becomes a totally different game, to the point that when I played Final Fantasy VII, I didn't realize the original game. I didn't realize there was this whole extra world outside of Midgar because I'd only ever seen Midgar. So with Rebirth, they're like, no, now it's an open world RPG. It's much more in line with something like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. And I like the fact that they were willing to take the different chunks of the game, flesh them out, and make them their own in ways that actually makes more sense for those chapters of the larger project.
Yeah, I mean, it also just has resulted in two games that I like to very different degrees. I love Remake.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I didn't really get into Rebirth, but that's one that I really do want to give another shot to when it inevitably comes to Switch 2 sometime next year. Probably. I have to imagine, or the year after, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I also just like, I reflect back on the time playing Remake quite fondly. That was a big, like, because that game came out in like June or July of 2020, sometime in that summer. And so that was like a big COVID time sink for me, playing that game every night. And so I really, really dug it. I really, really dug that. And I think that, you know, I like that it feels like there's a lot of RPGs coming out that are speaking to somebody like myself that isn't so invested in the genre. And I know that the topic of the status of the RPG is hotly debated amongst people with much more of a stake in it than I. But
it always has been.
It always has been, of course. but I just really enjoy what these games have done, and I'm really intrigued to see that third one. I'm really intrigued to see what that's gonna be, because again, I played like an hour of the original Final Fantasy VII. That's it ever. I don't actually have any fucking idea what happens in the last portion of that game. And there's like ghosts and things in this new version, so I'll be really cool to see it all wrap up. And you imagine, right? They're talking about this third part like it's not massively far away.
My guess is 27.
So having that all out in like the same decade is very cool. Absolutely. And you know, I think a big theme of gaming right now is just sort of the time it takes between entries for things. Yeah. Right. And so to have 3 massive RPGs like this come out in sequence like that, I think is also kind of just a cool story, when a lot of other games on this list are sort of the sole standing entries in their series, with either the one before it being far in the past or the one to come being far into the future.
Sure. Yeah. So I think one thing I want to establish as maybe an element of this video here is discussing, as we go through these 14 games, we've kind of lumped the Final Fantasy VII games together. On accident, oopsie. But if we think, once we get to the end of the decade, when we hit 2030 and that clock ticks over, if we think that people will still be talking about these games in that list of the best games of the decade. Final Fantasy VII, I think, is an interesting one in that it's going to continue to be relevant, in that we're not done with the game, with the larger project. That was a Freudian slip. But so I think that will help. But it'll be interesting then to see if Remake and Rebirth continue to maintain in that conversation, or maybe they get supplanted by the third one, or maybe it's sort of a Lord of the Rings thing where it's like people do end up thinking of it more as this completed holistic trilogy that they talk about as one of those big things. I mean, again, that's not how I would view those games, but if that's how people do by the end of the trilogy, then okay, fine. Like, I can't do anything about that. But what do you think about in terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake project? Or either of these games in particular, if you think when we hit 2030, if people will still say those are some of the best games of the decade.
No, 100%. I don't see any doubt about that, because I think about the status of like a Mass Effect trilogy or other things. You know, I feel like these like self-contained trilogies of the 7th generation or earlier are still talked about as these big units, these big important things. And I think this will certainly be the same. And like I said, I think that the proximity of these games makes their differences even more impressive, but also just the proximity of them as a whole is going to make them feel like one clear unit. Because then you get to 2030 and you're going to be able to buy the fucking Final Fantasy Remake all in bundle like they have for Kingdom Hearts, and that's going to be like a perpetual thing. I think these are going to be like staple games. Sure. But it's interesting, right? Because again, I think that I bet you could probably get the 8 people who responded with some version of FF7 to like unify and make that one big item higher on the list if you said okay.
Oh yeah. Because there were 9 responses related to FF7. Again, one of them actually was Remake plus Rebirth, and I didn't think that was fair to include that as one entry. So technically they should have could have 5, or together they would have 9. Like it is a little bit interesting. But yeah, it's also, I think a lot of people put both of them on their list.
Yeah, and I think it just, to me, is like there's a real relevance to those games, and I raised that because let's talk about one here that is in the 4 bracket that I feel like I'm unsure about. To your point about this relevance here, Astrobot.
Yeah,
I'm unsure about it because I have to say, because I was making my list, and it was quite challenging for me because a while ago you had made this prompt in our Discord of just what are your 5 favorite games from each of the years of the decade? So I basically made my many months ago, and I opened up my backlog and that list was just there. So I was taking that list and trimming it down to 10 overall. And Astrobot was one that is I was like, ooh, does this belong in my 10 for the whole decade? Because it was in my 5 for 2024, and I just don't think it does for me. Sure. I feel like I don't think about that game very much anymore. And obviously, I only played it a bit over a year ago.
Yep.
And I feel like it's going to wane. I feel like it's going to keep waning.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think it's an excellent game. I had so much fun with it. But I feel like it doesn't quite have anything about it that continues to live in my imagination.
Yes. And Abram, I'm going to point to it. I'm going to point to the issue.
Yeah.
It's that all the fucking characters in that game are boring. There's no iconography to Astrobot. I like Astrobot as a little guy, but the game are all 3 of them. I've played and you've played all 3 Astro games, and I like all of them. They're some of my favorite games of all. At one point, each of those 3 games has been in my favorite games of all time list. And so Astro as the sort of Astro trilogy project, right? I really have a big affinity for that. But I do think that the lack of distinct iconography is a big part of why the fandom for that game and that series is not particularly strong. I agree. I think that is one of the games that has fallen most quickly from prominence. It feels very of the moment when people were so excited about it around when it was coming out, and it sort of carried its momentum into winning Game of the Year as kind of this underdog, little scrappy team within Sony making something really special. And it is a really special game, and we both really love it. We have an excellent review where we praise almost everything about it. But it also, since then, most of the conversation around it is, I don't really think about Astro anymore. And so because of that, because we're only 14, 15 months removed from the release of that game, and we're already saying that there's no way that it sticks around till the end of 2030.
I don't know. I just when I was thinking about my 10, it's what are the games that are really gonna continue to mean something to me, and I just don't think this is gonna be one of them. I'm really interested to see what Asobi ends up doing next. And I feel like the more distance we get from Astrobot, kind of the less I want the next game to be another Astrobot. Although I think it likely will.
It probably will be, but again, I also think that Astro is plain enough as a character and as a concept to where I think it's very possible that they continue to build and make a world and a set of mechanics and things that feel very distinct to Astro. I think Astro is just really, really solid, and it's a great game. But I do think that they can build on that because we see their ideas, we see these really fun world ideas that they've got, and there are definitely some mechanics in Astrobot that I think are really special, but I think they just need to lean into that.
You gotta give them some more tools. Give them some more unique tools. I think of the mouse level from Astrobot.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe if I make a list of my 10 favorite levels of the decade, maybe I'll put the mouse level in there. But
Dude, that'd be a fun prompt.
Yeah.
Favorite levels, favorite areas, something like that. I like that. I would probably put the opening area of Mario Wonder, where you've got those big blue and green and pink hills rolling in the back. Oh, I love that area.
Pipe Rock Plateau.
Great call.
I love that game. That game is on my personal 10.
Yeah.
That's on my personal 10 list. I would pick the Singing Piranha Plant level, which I love.
Sure. Yeah.
Tucker, here's one that I can't really comment on because I never played it.
Yeah.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 also got 4 votes. Yeah. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, it's I played 3 or 4 hours of that game. Not enough to get into it far enough to where I really have a good grasp on it. But it's one that I recognized resonated quite deeply. I think this is on this list. It's kind of the only one, maybe even Astro though, where I feel like maybe some recency bias, right? Like, will Kingdom Come? And it's hard for me to say because it's not one of my games. I mean, it's not one that I know too much about. We definitely have multiple of our community members, obviously, given that it got here, but who are talking about it constantly and talking about how it's one of their favorite games of the year, and they're recommending for people to try it, and then as they try it, they all start sort of talking about it again. And I'll be really interested to see if that momentum carries through the end of the decade. Because it's also one of those things where now it being such a revered game punts Warhorse into a totally different stratosphere of prominence, and so it's possible that this becomes sort of their. I don't know. Like, there definitely are some games where you see them as a turning point, right, in the journey of a studio to becoming majorly prominent. And I do think this is a massive step up for them. And so if they follow this up with something, maybe this will be then seen. Obviously, it's a very beloved game now, but it could continue to maintain prominence through the studio maintaining prominence. But it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people like really praise this like a super reactive RPG, and there's like a lot of choice and a lot of like real ability to shape the story and make creative decisions, and I think that's all cool. But I have to be honest with you, I'm just very distanced from these like very historically grounded games.
Yeah.
Like if I'm gonna play an RPG, I want there to be like something a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more about it.
It's fantastical about it. I think that's a great word for it. Well, here's a good example of that actually. Metaphor, ReFantasia.
Ah, yeah.
Also 4 votes. We both played that game.
I was actually just totally unrelated. I was singing the Metaphor battle theme.
There you go.
I mean, I know you didn't play too much of that game, but you remember when the beat drops and there's that guy like scatting in some fucking crazy language. That's some crazy shit, dude. I love that shit.
I've seen you scatting quite often. I just sort of have like an inability to like really devote myself to these big games on consoles. So I'm definitely going to try this one again when it comes to Switch 2 because I like what I played of it a fair bit. I'm just like not in front of the TV enough to like really get into these big games like that. But I think it's super cool. I don't know. I don't like because it kind of you know what's interesting to me, and I think it was our friend Brennan making this point to me, maybe to both of us, about how people are like again taking it back to Expedition 33, which is not meant to do like rag on Expedition because again I love that game. It got 3 votes. It barely missed our list here. Tucker wanted to fudge numbers even more than we already are by pretending it got 4 votes.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Hey, I fucking.
But I think it's an interesting moment to talk about that. In that, this could be recency bias, and it probably is. But
for
the
Metaphor?
amount of for Expedition 33, the amount of fervor for that game. If we're also trying to make this a conversation about what we project by the end of the decade, games will still be relevant and still be talked about. I really do think there's a very strong chance that Expedition 33 is one of those defining games, remembered games, talked about games for the rest of the decade. And so that's kind of why, and I've kind of done it now, wanted to fudge it up a little bit. But like if we're trying to make this a defining list of what games have come out in the first half of the decade, I really do think that there's a chance that this is among those, maybe even like top 5. Like most defining games of the first half of the decade. I think it's just not reflected by the votes on our particular poll.
Yeah, I think it's foolish to think that Expedition is going to be like a flash in the pan type of game. But the reason I was invoking that alongside Metaphor is I kind of feel like Metaphor was sort of that a little bit in 2024 of like, here's that big RPG. This is the big mature. This is the one. This is a new This is the Persona Studios' new one. It's up for Game of the Year. And, you know, it had a lot of significance, and I kind of feel like it kind of lost a lot of that motion.
Yes, but I also think that one big element to this is how mainstream, how a game broke into the mainstream and really grabbed cultural attention. Metaphor didn't do that. Metaphor has, as of mid-2025, sold 2 million copies. I think
I look that up.
Expedition 33 is, I think, over 5 million. And so, like, it's quite literally magnitudes bigger in terms of sales and popularity. Metaphor's a fascinating one where it is one of the RPGs that has connected with me most in terms of my willingness to really sink a ton of time into it. It is very rare for me, as with you, to really sit down with a game for a long time. But the structure of the game, the theme, the narrative themes, the cast of characters, the music, the art direction. I mean, it is such a strong creative vision that is so relevant for the time that it released in and everything. I mean, I just think it's a really, really remarkable game, and it's one of those ones where I hope that it sticks around, because I really do think it is something super special. But I really do think that there's a chance that because it didn't sell particularly well, and because it's Persona but not Persona, that when we get Persona 6, Metaphor will ultimately kind of become a footnote. Where it's like, oh, we got this other studio with the Persona 3, 4, and 5 creators making these games, but Persona is the Atlas series. And Persona is like the JRPG series, kind of, in the modern era. And so I think that there's a chance that any like big attention or goodwill that Metaphor gained is kind of squashed within the next couple of years, as presumably Persona 6 is a massive, massive deal.
Well, because I also I think one of the things that didn't really motivate me about Expedition in the 10 or so hours I played is I didn't think that the social Metaphor was the social aspect was as strong as the social aspect in Persona.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I kind of felt like Metaphor was trying to borrow more stuff from Persona than it needed.
Sure.
And I wonder if that hurt it a little bit for me. Although I would like to try it more. And to be fair, even if it doesn't sort of reach the status of Persona, which I think is hard to reach, it still is in that tradition, and I think it's a visually striking game, and there's a lot like those fucking crazy bosses. Like, what the hell is going on here? There's a lot about that game that I think is very striking, and I think that when it does come to Nintendo platforms and it gets sort of a second wind, which it's certainly going to have. I'm looking forward to giving it more of my time, because there is something to that I really like. But also, to your point about timeliness, it in an election year was also a nice bit of serendipity for that game.
That and Conclave.
I just wanted you to know, by the way, when I was going to look up how many copies did Metaphor sell, I was looking up in the tab where I had Baku Baku Animal pulled up.
Why?
Because Zaku Zaku Actors.
Oh, that's funny.
Sounds like Baku Baku Animal.
It does sound like Baku Baku Animal. That's very funny,
and I was
Baku Baku Animal.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, did anybody put Baku Baku Animal on the list? But actually, Tucker, Baku Baku Animal did not come out in the last 5 years.
It came out in the 90s. Have you ever seen that game? That's one of the most visually unappealing games I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've only really seen the creatures from it, because like that's one of the emotes in our server. But I'm looking right now. It's like, yeah, it doesn't look very nice, does it?
No, you wouldn't want to walk through that in a dark alley.
Even the creatures are kind of fucked up.
Absolutely.
Time I spent with them. Tucker, there's one other game that had 4 votes here, and it should have had 11 votes. It should have actually had 12 votes. It should have been the most voted for game on the list, and that was The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
Which is, in my mind, easily among the best games of the decade, and it's not even really close. Like I'm making my list of 10 games. That's one of the few no-brainers on the list.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, I don't say this because it's interesting, right? This is maybe a phenomenon to mention briefly. You were saying that you were kind of brushing up against this issue with some of our respondents being difficult, saying, I didn't even play 10 games in 2020.
Sure.
I know there's not 10 games in 2020s I love. I had the opposite problem.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games from this decade that I love, but there was a couple that were just like, okay, I'm not actually filling 10 slots. I'm filling like 6 slots because 4 of them are just guaranteed.
Yeah.
And Last of Us 2 is one of them for me. Like, this game is tremendous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is an interesting one where I would really love to have, and maybe this is kind of the time to do it. Maybe going into 2026 is the time to do it. Where we've got the season 2 of the series in the rearview mirror, as it were.
Yeah.
We've got Intergalactic coming soon. I really would love to have a sort of reflective moment on the legacy of The Last of Us Part 2. Because it's one of those games that was so hotly contested as it came out, that I think its release fervor has really been like what's been dominating like thought about that game. It's like, oh man, people were so upset about Joel's death and switching to Abby and the controversial ending and like all this stuff. Like narratively, that game made such giant swings that were so polarizing that was the conversation about the game. And I still maintains that, but it's a game that I think is a lot more than that. And I think that the fact that it has those controversial and polarizing narrative beats I think needs to be talked about more than they were polarized. Like, why were these decisions made?
Yeah.
What does that mean for storytelling and the growth of the medium and the growth of Naughty Dog as a studio and Neil Druckmann as a creator? Like all this stuff. Like I feel like people talk about Last of Us 2 in platitudes when I really do think it's one of those games that, from the passion that I have for it and the quality level I think it hits, is among those all-timing medium defining moments. And it was, I think it was my number one. Like I think it's we'll actually go through our list at the end of this video, but it's one of those. I agree. No, it's a no-brainer. Where it's like I'm surprised actually to see it not be higher. What you said, like it should have had 11 votes, but it should have had 27.
I think here's my thought about Last of Us 2. I think Last of Us 2 is penetrable. I don't think it's impenetrable, but I think you have to work.
Sure.
I think you have to work for this one.
Okay.
And I think part of the
to penetrate it.
Well, what I was realizing is like I like the not quite impenetrable thing, but I don't like penetrating Last of Us 2. I don't like that turn of phrase.
One of the few games on this list with penetration.
That's actually true.
That's true.
That's actually true.
Honest to God, I see that scene of Abby and Owen show up on the internet like every couple weeks. So there's some cultural staying power.
We'll get to Cyberpunk in time. The fucking in Cyberpunk is much more gratuitous than the fucking in Last of Us Part 2. But I think that the reason that a lot of this I think very easy discourse continues to dominate the game is just because I think this game asks a lot from you, and I think it's you got to really be an engaged player of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why, even though I've not replayed it ever, that it still sort of is so vivid in my memory.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying about maybe in this year before seemingly the reporting is that Intergalactic's coming 2027. Maybe take this year to go back through Last of Us.
I think that would be I think I want to do that as well.
And you've never played Part 1. I think you would really enjoy enjoy that version of the game too. So
But then the ultimate question is, do you think by the end of the decade, given how controversial the game was, and it still maintains, I mean, even the season 2 of the series, adapting that narrative was very controversial. I never saw any of the.
Yeah, I don't watch season 2.
I don't care. But it's interesting though that the HBO show being one of the biggest shows, period. That first season winning so many awards, and the second season getting a lot of viewership, and also conversation has certainly helped that game to stay in conversation as people are still talking about the plot points and the characters and the aesthetic and the world of all of that, because it has this adaptation that's currently still happening, and that's much like Final Fantasy VII still maintaining conversation because it's not complete yet. That's also true for the Last of Us HBO show, which is still not done adapting The Last of Us Part 2, and so then The Last of Us Part 2 is still has a maintaining relevance that is not quite done yet. That might help it stay around a little bit stronger still in conversation.
Yeah, I also just think that like a masterpiece from Naughty Dog isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like that's that game's not going anywhere. Tucker, we got a couple games that got 5 votes here. The following games have 5 votes in our list: Hades, Cyberpunk, Animal Crossing: New Horizons, and Yakuza 7.
Yeah.
Now let's take them one by one here because I think they're all interesting. Well, I want to start with Hades because I did a little tabulation here actually. 5 votes for Hades, not 1 vote for Hades 2, not 1.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and that's really interesting. Let me just double check. I think that is also true for me. No, I didn't put Hades on my list, but I easily could have. Hades is one of those games that is one of those defining moments in a genre for me personally. I think that's also maybe why it really stands out and stands among this list as one of those defining moments of the decade so far. Is Hades was a game that in the roguelike genre that I was always hesitant to really get into. I dabbled in things like Spelunky and Binding of Isaac, and I always felt the starting from zero every time, this like almost arcadey run-based nature to be really off-putting. And it was what Hades did with that genre, spinning it to make it something that is roguelike in structure but narrative in progression that really made it resonate with me. And I poured so much time into Hades, and I really, really connected to it. And I think it's one of those ones where I think a lot of people would probably say Hades 2 is the better game, but Hades has that cultural moment that Hades 2 couldn't have because it's a direct sequel. And so I think that's why Hades will probably be the game that's still talked about, right? By the end of the decade, as opposed to Hades 2 that obviously people love, nominated for Game of the Year, but doesn't quite have that same moment. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm personally someone who really does champion the intrinsic qualities of a game in some ways over their historical importance. And I think this is one where it's like very modern, but I think it does have that balance where Hades 2 is probably the better design game, breadth of content, the more intricate art direction. But Hades was the one that got the chance to, in some ways, redefine a genre and certainly introduce a lot more people into a genre.
Yeah, I mean, this was I'm struggling to think of exactly which rogue type games I'd put any time into before. A couple that come to mind, like Rogue Legacy. I played a lot of on Vita and things like that. But Hades also, like it was for you, was kind of an opportunity for me to become more invested in that style of game. And I think decisively make clear to me that it's not for me, this style of game.
Because if there was gonna be anyone, it was gonna be that.
It was gonna be this one. But I think it's interesting. You're talking about this cultural moment, right? In these 5 votes games, what year did Yakuza 7 come out?
2020.
Yeah, these are all 2020 games.
They're all 5. Yeah, that's so true, actually.
And I think that it makes sense in a way, right? Because I think the games that we all played during COVID we really attached ourselves to, and also obviously Last of Us 2, 7 remake, also games from 2020.
Wow.
I think 2020 is really one of the most remarkable years for games of our lifetime, I think. And I think that the bonds people made with those games during that time is very key. But that's not to discount what the games themselves are doing, but just to say that I think that those games of COVID are really sticking with people, and for good reason. I think if these games were so good. And you don't want to reduce them to just circumstance, but I think that the circumstance helped to marry that goodness, and so maybe that's also why, to your point, the cultural moment for Hades 1 was so much stronger than 2.
Yeah, and it's funny specifically in the case of Hades that game could have had even bigger splash at the moment, because it launched on Epic Game Store and Nintendo Switch. It was not on Steam. It was not on PlayStation. It was not on Xbox.
And it was also when it was in early access for a while, right? Before it came, like 2019 or something.
It must have been on
prior.
Steam.
Because I feel like I have.
But it certainly wasn't on the big boy consoles.
Because I kind of feel like
Windows September 2020. Yeah, okay.
And when was it was in early access prior to 2020?
Yeah.
Because I think that this was one of those games, sort of like a Hollow Knight in a couple years prior, where the Switch really helped it. Really helped to find an audience. So let's just talk about Animal Crossing then in a similar breath. Animal Crossing doesn't really make my list, this version of it. Although I'm quite interested, actually, in a couple weeks' time from when we're recording this, to try it again with the Switch 2 version.
Are you going to restart?
I don't think so. Because the game is not... It's so much more friendly than the past ones, to where like your animals don't want to kill you if you disappear, and I kind of feel like that joke like remains in the community, despite the fact that you can just show up many years later in New Horizons, and the animals are like, "Oh, good to see you."
Yeah,
they're not like, "Oh, I was like about to kick the chair out from under me." Because I hadn't seen you in 2 years. Now they're just like, "Hey, I hope you had a good time when you were gone." I think, again, speaking of the COVID moment, that's so key for this game, but I also just think that this game stands on its own. And it's cool to see it here, because Nintendo actually only had 2 entries in this list, this conjoined list. This and one that we'll get to later. And so it's cool to me to see, okay, well, what were the Nintendo games?
Oh, no, sorry, yeah.
I mean,
the acronym that we used for the one that's above it went in when I had the other.
It's cool to see which Nintendo games really stuck with people, and New Horizons I think is going to have forever changed Nintendo, Animal Crossing, and also I think Nintendo in some way. I mean, look at I think that you can probably draw a pretty straight line from the success of this game to the willingness to have games like Pokopia and Tomodachi Life take up residence in 2026. And obviously, I don't know when we're gonna get the new Animal Crossing game. Frankly, I kind of thought it would be this year, and now only God knows. But yeah, I think it's really cool to see New Horizons make the list.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. That is one of those games where I think actually quite similarly to Last of Us 2, I think it's so much more than the way people talk about it. And it's something that I've really been mulling my thoughts over as I think about how the last few years have gone and which games have really stuck around. And Animal Crossing New Horizons as a redefinition of what Animal Crossing is on sort of an engagement level, I think gets undersold a lot. In that it is easily, because it launched at the right time on an accessible system in a time when people were really, the adoption rate for Nintendo Switch was really high, and it was the defining game of that year, and everyone was at home, and the social elements is like, yeah, all that is true. But I also think that that making those the narrative of why that game was successful undersell the fact that it's not as quote-unquote thorny of an experience as the older Animal Crossing games are, where they do make choices like your animals aren't pissed at you when you stay away and you come back, in that you can place a bunch of stuff outside. There is this crafting element. There is the it's a little bit easier to progress in the game and a little bit quicker of a time scale. These things that I think hardcore Animal Crossing fans can bristle at, and I think that's totally fair in terms of what the identity of the series was. But what I think was Nintendo smartly, for my taste and for many people's taste, looking at Animal Crossing, the appeal of it in the aesthetic, in the building up a community, and softening those edges to allow a bigger mass appeal. And I think that is also a big reason why a lot of people got into it. I really do think that it's a confluence of the two things. But if a more traditional Animal Crossing had released, where there were these elements that New Horizons does have, if those were not there, I don't think it would have resonated in the same way with the breadth of people that New Horizons did. And so it's one of those games where I'm always trying to think about the design level things that really made the game hit.
I mean, Animal Crossing, it's funny because just this morning I read this cool piece on Ateo Games, new gaming site, called Winter and Death and Harvest Moon, written by Holly Nielsen. And in this piece, they're talking about the differences between the Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town on Game Boy Advance and then the remake of it.
Yeah.
And how there's things like your animals can die in the original, they don't die in the new version.
Sure.
The townsfolk would sort of criticize you for using overly gaudy materials on your farm in the original.
Interesting.
And in the remake, the mayor even says like, oh, that kind of criticism's old-fashioned in this town, and we don't look down on people in that way. And they're kind of talking about the removal out of this friction. And I think that the prominence of cozy gaming and the farming games and life sim games that fit into that sort of led Animal Crossing by the ear a little bit into something that's a lot more similar to its peers, which to your point, I think is where part of that popularity comes from.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is an Animal Crossing game really for the tastes of people who are playing its peer series.
Yeah.
And I think that if Animal Crossing GameCube released now, I don't think it would really find its place in the same way as this much more frictionless and comfortable Animal Crossing. Now, again, that's why it's far from my favorite entry, although I'm with the Switch 2 version, I want to try it again more in kind of its own terms for what it is and not for what it isn't.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a great track record of coming to the right side of history recently. You like Mario Odyssey a lot more, you like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet a lot more, and now we're looking right down the barrel. The gun is pointed at your face.
We'll see.
For New Horizons.
But I think it's a smartly engineered game for popularity, and I think that is both a criticism and a praise of shrewd design. So,
but what do you think in terms of this game popularity wise, legacy wise, do we think it's going to stick around to the end of the decade? It's one of those. It's one of those ones where I I'm curious because I think it is maybe two of its moment in that it was so popular for very specific reasons at a very specific moment in time where and maybe certainly possible this is just the bubbles that I'm in terms of people that I know, but I don't know anyone who has played that game in 3 years, 4 years. I haven't played it in 5 years, and I'm not going to play the Switch 2 version. I've got other stuff to do. But by the end of the decade, I won't have played it in 10 years. And I think that'll be true for the vast majority of people who loved this game so much in the moment that it came out. When I actually don't think that's necessarily true for a lot of these games. I think a lot more of them have a replay value, a introducing someone to it for the first time, and it's still like feeling like, oh, I can really get into this. I don't think that's necessarily the case with New Horizons because it's just a social game and it was so of its time. Like, people aren't really resetting their islands. If you get someone, of course, Switch 2 version will certainly help with this, but like, you know, if you're giving someone a copy of it in 2028 or 29, like, are they going to want to? Are their friends playing it because it lost that social luster? I'm not quite as sure this game is going to be still considered among the top by the end of the decade.
Yeah, but it's also a Nintendo game. Like Nintendo games of their B tier and higher are constantly cited, even if it's in relation to the next Animal Crossing game. And I also do think you kind of undervalue what the Animal Crossing community that is still playing this game a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, is it, in terms of if you zoom all the way out to just gamers as a big conglomerate, are they thinking about Animal Crossing? They're probably not thinking about Animal Crossing right now.
Yeah.
So I just think that, you know, in terms of relevance to Nintendo players, I don't think the game's going anywhere.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's still like there's still Animal Crossing YouTubers who are like constantly talking about this shit. There's people on my friends list who are playing this game constantly. Mm-hmm. I just think that Animal Crossing is not the sort of game that goes away. And I think that even if New Horizons was geared more towards playing with friends, it's not solely that.
Sure.
I think you could give it to someone in 2028 and they're going to have plenty of fun even if none of their friends are playing. Mm-hmm. Yakuza 7, I don't really have anything to say about. Looks cool. I'm going to play it when that comes to Switch. I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, the only thing that I would really say about Yakuza Like a Dragon is I love it. It was one of the ones I put on my list. And I think a big part of the reason why I see this game as one of those turning point games, even though it's 7th mainline entry, like 12th Yakuza game to be released chronologically. Yeah. Like, it is in this very long tradition of a series that had been growing in popularity, had a massive spike around Yakuza 0 in 2015, 5 years before this. But I think that for that series, a big part of its identity was repetition, was sameness, and breaking the mainline series, redefining its core gameplay element to make a turn-based RPG versus a more brawler RPG is not only a massive like creative risk, right? It totally could have not paid off, but also, again, it's in the same legacy, but it also is a new story. It takes place in the chronology of the entire Yakuza series, but having Ichiban and his friends be the core cast and leaving aside Kiryu, who had been the protagonist of the series for 15 years up to that point, is not only, again, another big creative risk, especially for a fan base that's as passionate and invested as the Yakuza fans are, but I think it also, both of those reasons are, I think, why this one really sticks in the mind of people, in that it doesn't fall into sort of the potential mush that all the other ones where it's like, okay, you're in the exact same city, you're using the exact same combat, you've been to these exact same places. That's not true with Like a Dragon, in that it is a new city, it is new combat, it is new characters, and leaning into a more comedy aspect than the previous game had. Like, I think that they really did a lot here with Yakuza Like a Dragon that makes it a fan favorite for a couple of reasons, because it's safe because it's in a large standing IP, but it's the least safe you can make a Yakuza game like that because they really rethought it from the ground up.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And And I think it also, again, like these other RPGs, just belongs to this tradition of kind of different feeling turn-based RPGs. And I'm interested in it. I'm really interested in this one. I mean, Yakuza is like super niche still. Like, just and if we're making the point about if is Animal Crossing going to stick around, is Final Fantasy VII going to stick around? I think is Yakuza going to stick around? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter because I think that also we're talking to a really dialed-in group of people, and this is about what the game does interestingly in and of itself. So yeah, I the idea of like starting from Yakuza 0 and playing all these games to me feels like super uninteresting. But to play this and Infinite Wealth, I think is very doable. And I just this one, if you gotta get it on Switch, I feel like even more than the various other interstitial Yakuza games, like other than the ones that I put on, I really think these ones got to be there. I think the appetite. Yeah,
I think it'll hit before the end of the year. That's my theory. They got 0, 1, and 2 out before Kiwami 3. But like maybe because there is a Yakuza Remastered Collection, which is 4, 5, and 6. That it's a PS4 game. It's not even on PS5 or series. It's possible they do that, right? You can just drop that as a trilogy collection. They're a little bit up-res, but they're not Kiwami remakes. Maybe they do that, and then they can just go to 7 and 8, or they can just fucking do it. Like,
yeah,
you can just do it.
Yeah, you should just do it. Yeah, I feel like there's real appetite for these kinds of like off the beaten path turn-based RPGs right now. Yeah, so give it to me right now. Give it to me in February. If we do a little February Nintendo Direct, say that's coming out like either right away or like in a couple months' time. That seems like a great strategy to me. Last one, the fives cat.
An echelon.
No, we got another 5. Cyberpunk 2077.
Well, technically, this is the last 5, so that is an echelon.
I guess that's true. I'm huge on this game.
Yeah.
I'm huge on Cyberpunk. To me, I think Cyberpunk and our number 1 game, which we'll get to eventually, kind of now, in my view, belong in the category of games that are never going to die because as they get older and older, they're going to become cheaper and cheaper every Steam sale. To me, Cyberpunk is one of those like, oh, everybody's just got that in their library types of games. It just is like such an attractive game in how, like, I think Night City is like the most alive feeling place I've ever been to in a game. And you just have these like very deep, if you want them to be RPG systems, under this just like good feeling like shooter, open world shooter. It has like this very mainstream sensibility and this very deep role playing sensibility, and they're fused with this super cool world. Yeah. And so I just think that this is gonna be one of those games everybody has, everyone's played. Yeah. And I think Cyberpunk is excellent.
Yeah, it's. I think that this is maybe the opposite of the way I see The Last of Us 2. Those games actually released kind of close together. They both had incredibly controversial launches. Yeah. But Cyberpunk has, I think, escaped that in a way that I think I would not necessarily have thought possible when that game was freshly out. In that I had such a poor experience with it and have not gone back to it, and that was a very common experience that I really didn't believe that it was going to turn into anything else. I thought it was going to have that stink forever. And it kind of does, but it's almost like a joke now. It's a footnote now. And that, oh man, that game launched broken. Not the case anymore. Obviously has been fixed, has received major updates, and also that IP has been, the ground has been seeded in a broader way, and having the Edge Runner series and stuff. Like Cyberpunk 2077 is a mainstay game now. It's a mainstream game. It was when it came out, but it has, you're right, maintained that everyone's just kind of checking it out, and no one's having the issues that they were 5 years ago. And so it's certainly one that I will give an earnest shot at some point, outside of the fact that I had a poor experience at launch and I returned my copy on PlayStation, all of that. It's one that I think does sort of stand alongside that tradition of Western RPGs, and I think it's the defining Western RPG of the 2020s. Nothing else is really. There's not a ton of competition.
Did anybody vote for Starfield? One person voted for Starfield.
I think it was Andrew. But Starfield could have been that, and certainly wasn't. That's an interesting one where maybe it'll grow in prominence over time. I don't really know. But we haven't gotten GTA yet. We haven't gotten Witcher 4 yet. But it's kind of like the major Western RPG, and it maintains that relevance. I think it's a very impressive game that they were able to sort of, they understood that long term perception of your game and accessibility and obviously it being cheap and having these updates and stuff. That's way more important than having a controversial launch. And so they polished it up. They gave it long term support. They made a very well received expansion to it. And as far as I know, like they're still like they're cooking it, like, and they're working on sequels and stuff. So like this is something that I think is one of those defining modern game stories. And like here's what you can do in the modern games industry. A controversial launch, a successful launch, but a controversial launch is not the legacy of your game if you continue to support it.
Yeah, because also like it was only broken on one. It's only broken on console, and I say only is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. But it's like the high Metacritic score that game got from PC players was high for a reason. I just think that even as the game has been deepened and deepened and deepened, it still is just for everybody. I think it's the why I think it's going to continue to be, and just like everybody's got to copy this game, is that you really don't need to be hardcore into RPGs to get something out of this. You can just play it as a linear shooter 100%. Game.
Yeah, and I think that it's cyberpunk aesthetic, its futuristic aesthetic is a big part of that.
Awesome.
Like obviously, Witcher 3 is a very big deal, but like, and I know I'm not necessarily indicative of everyone, but like when I think about which game would I just rather engage with on an aesthetic level, on a gameplay level, a futuristic shooter is way more appealing to me, and I think broadly more appealing to the mainstream than Witcher 3 is not turn-based. It is an action game, but it is more traditionally RPG in its elements, and it has that fantasy aesthetic, which I think is a little bit less popular. And those are like, it's Cyberpunk's a shooter, right? Like I can certainly engage with that on like a more personal level.
Now, to be fair, Witcher 3, according to my results here, sold 60 million copies. Fucking crazy number.
What?
Witcher 3 sold 60 million copies. It's one of the biggest games ever. I think you're a little off base on thinking that Cyberpunk is more...
That's interesting. I think maybe I'm future projecting this in a way that I think Cyberpunk will stand alongside The Witcher, because I think it does have that...
Oh, for sure.
Also, I can just say, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, I think you're just wrong. But I think that if you're talking about me... Yeah, I'm way more interested in Cyberpunk. Now, Cyberpunk is like very, very, very much a pastiche of a lot of other Cyberpunk stuff. It's like
gives a fuck.
Right. I think it's a sort of aesthetic that has not been massively mined in gaming in particular.
Number 8.
Best-selling games ever?
For Witcher.
Yeah, Witcher 3 is fucking tremendously huge.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You got it's Blade Runner, it's Neuromancer, it's Strange Days, it's all these other things, and they're stuck together, and they really elevated the Cyberpunk IP, because Cyberpunk 2077 is based on a pre-existing thing. But I think it really stands alone, because I think a lot of RPGs, are going to fit into these categories of fantasy, or fit in these categories of some kind of apocalyptic thing. But then you got this, and it's different, and different among its peers. I think that helps a lot. But let's move on here. We got 2 games that got 6 votes each. Those are Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. What do you think about God of War Ragnarok? I didn't play it. I don't have any opinion on this game.
I did play it, and I do love that game, and it is one of my favorite games. And it's one of those ones where it speaks so strongly to my sensibilities, in that I do, with all the passion that I have for exploring games history and playing indie games and checking out strange corners of the industry, I do have a personal enjoyment level, affinity, and respect for the massive blockbuster over the shoulder action game. And God of War Ragnarok is like the defining example of that in my mind. Like the combat is so solid, the characters are so rich, the environments are so gorgeous, the scores and the score of the game and the themes and all this stuff. Like I was hook, line, and sinker all the way into God of War Ragnarok, and alongside The Last of Us Part 2, it stands as one of those defining works of the medium in my mind for the taste that I have. And it's one of those games that I recognize its resonance with my taste so personally that I have a hard time thinking about or like looking outside of myself to like what do other people think of this game? How big is it actually in terms of general popular reception? What will its legacy be? I really don't know on this one. I think I actually putting in a conversation with things like Cyberpunk and Last of Us. I think this could be one of those games where they're doing like an Amazon show, I think, for it, that an adaptation of the 2018 God of War and Ragnarok ends up maintaining that relevance because of an adaptation. But I just know that I love the game, and that's really all I personally need to say about it. But I'm not so sure. Like I don't know what other people think of it really.
Well, I think that a lot of like dorks and losers don't like it, but I think that this is a great pick because like, you know, I'm like this is a great game to hand to anybody, or maybe the first God of War and then get them play this one. But the point is, these big awesome
well, hey, God of War Remastered will probably come out next year.
These big awesome blockbusters.
God of War Part 1.
Whoa, these big awesome blockbuster Sony games are just like. They're popular for a reason. Like this is just, you know, even if I'm like God of War 2018, I'm like kind of on, so I never played Ragnarok. But you just give somebody a big, awesome looking action game like this.
Yeah,
that's gonna hit for a reason. So, and I also think, you know, it's interesting. I was checking our full data set here. There's no votes for a Horizon game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 2 votes for Spider-Man games. 1 vote for 2 and 1 vote for Miles Morales.
And almost none for a Ghost game either.
Yeah, very few. I think 2 votes for a Ghost game. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you know, God of War has come out on top of all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You know, I don't know. I part of me is like, oh, I'm surprised that like a Spider-Man game didn't make our list here. I'm surprised by that a little bit. But people gravitate in this direction. But I bet if we were to actually get all the data, Spider-Man 2 would be the one that this year, not God of War.
Yeah. But it also is one of those ones where I think its legacy is hampered in some way by the fact that much like Hades and Hades 2, 2018 God of War as a reboot is really what people think of when they're trying to say, okay, what are the best games? Obviously, that game didn't release in 2020, so you can't exactly say that. But like, if you're going to think about choosing one of those games to talk about, it's probably going to be that first one in the way that it reinvented the iconography, in the way that it reinvented the combat. It helped to build on that legacy of Sony's AAA action adventure games, and which is, again, it's understandable to me. I personally like Ragnarok a lot. I love the first game, but I love Ragnarok even more. So I would push back on that from like a personal level, in that I think Ragnarok's a higher quality game, but it's obviously it's not a big deal. But I do think that's a part of the reason why I like thinking about this game 5 years from now.
Yeah,
I think it sits in that interesting place where its prequel, God of War 2018, it looms maybe too large for its legacy to really build on it in its own meaningful way.
I think I like Ragnarok more than the 2018 one.
Maybe, yeah.
I think that combat in the second one looks fucking awesome.
It is, yeah.
Do you get the Sparta? You must get the Sparta blades at some point in 2018 as well.
Yeah,
or no,
of course
you do. Yeah,
you do. It's like a major moment, like 2/3 of the way through the game. Kratos goes back to his house and he like moves a floorboard and he takes him out of the floor. It's like, you know.
Yeah, I'm just like, this game looks really cool. Maybe one day.
You might. Well, when it comes to Switch 2.
Yeah, when it comes to Switch 2. It's on PC. I've many times started playing God of War again on the Steam
Deck.
Deck.
Your leak. Yeah.
But the trouble with that one is I've seen the first like 4 hours of that game too many times at this point.
Because God of War?
Yeah, I tried playing that game probably at least 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I think if I play it at the right time, it's gonna grab me.
Yeah, but I think it might. Yeah. You said it's for everyone. Hand the Steam Deck to Jean for a couple hours. She plays through the first few hours of it, then she can hand it to you.
That's true. Yeah, she'd probably be really into it. She'd probably like the part where you fucking, who is it, Baldur? We were fighting in the house.
No, like opening fight, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good game.
That fight's a little talked up a little too much though, in my humble opinion. Elden Ring.
Elden
Tucker.
Ring. Would it be controversial to say?
Yep.
I expected this to be number 1. And I think it... who gives a fuck? Like, it's a votes here. But I think in terms of games, especially single-player games, defining the 2020 so far, I think it really is Elden Ring. That is like the major defining game.
Yeah, probably. I'd probably agree with you. Because I also feel like Elden Ring, that was the first Souls game I was interested in trying.
Yeah.
I think kind of like some other games we talked about in this list, like a Hades or in some ways also a Cyberpunk. There's like there's like an inviting quality to Elden Ring, where I don't think you have to be like super hardcore into Dark Souls to want to try this game out.
That's definitely true. I mean, it's magnitudes better than any of those other games.
I guess I played Sekiro before
Elden Ring. The same. Not the same. Also, I would say Sekiro the most hardcore.
Fucking way too hard for me. I couldn't. Damn, I couldn't do anything in Sekiro. But I think that Elden Ring is like, you're saying of the decade. I would go further than that. I think it's one of the games of our lifetime, really. Especially just with the way that FromSoft sort of looms large over gaming. I would say that they're easily in the top 5 most significant game studios. Yeah. Currently at it. So yeah, I mean, you speak on Elden Ring a little bit more because I played it for, I don't know, 15 hours. I thought it's still not quite my cup of tea, but I enjoyed that time with it. Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of the most impressive games I've ever played. It's one of my favorite games, and I think that it actually parallels quite nicely with what I said about Animal Crossing New Horizons. That a lot of the things that, to some degree, may alienate the hardcore fans from the previous entries of its series, quote unquote, are the reasons why it's so much bigger. I think that why it appeals to someone like you is that it fits alongside its contemporaries better than the previous From Software games. But for me and for many, I don't think that's a bad thing in that it still does retain a lot of the identity. I think this is also true with Animal Crossing, in that these games understand that looking outside of your own series to incorporate other elements, reinvent your quote unquote franchise just a touch, and bring in these other these fans of other games can be a real strength. I think that's part of why Elden Ring is such a special game. It's open world. It's got a little bit more forgiving checkpoints. Like, you don't have the runbacks for the bosses, which was one of the biggest things for previous Souls games. You've got a horse that you can ride around on, a mount. Like, the previous Souls games are so slow for the most part, and that's what makes them such special games. Is why I like them. But I think Elden Ring rejecting that and saying it's okay if we learn from Breath of the Wild, learn from the other open world games, but apply our touch to it. And keep that attention to lore and to art direction and to amazing boss design and to difficulty. Because while I think it might be, other than Dark Souls 3, might be the easiest Souls game, still motherfucker. Still really goddamn hard game. And so I think it's a really special game for a lot of reasons, but I think its willingness, or FromSoft's willingness, Miyazaki's willingness to in some way boil down the what made those other games so special to make it appeal to a wider audience, I think is why that game really does resonate and is the biggest easily of all these games. It has the fucking sequel with Nightrun, or spinoff, I guess, but all that. I mean, because I don't even really remember any of the bosses I fought. It didn't really do anything for me. If anything, I was just kind of annoyed by the bosses. Sure. Yeah. But what I liked about my time with that game was the things that I found. Sure. I thought that world of whatever it was called, I don't remember. Limgrave. Or no, that's one of the areas. It's like the Worlds Between or something like that. Sure. Yeah. I remember I fell down this whole cave system and found a big bear down there and some loot, and then I found a bunch of magic tortoises up on this mountainside or whatever. There's a lot of super cool stuff to find in that game. Mm-hmm. And I think that appealed to me in the way that Breath of the Wild appealed to me.
Sure.
It really wasn't the more traditional, okay, well, I'm going to sit here and learn these big boss enemies, or dial into the lore. It wasn't those things that sort of, from an outsider's perspective, define those other Souls games that interested me. And it's also partially why I've never super felt motivated to try like a Bloodborne or try a Dark Souls or whatever, because I just think that what I like about Elden Ring is sort of singular to Elden Ring among those games, but is common to other games, and I think that's why it interested me so much.
Yeah, totally.
Number 2 here, Tucker, with 7 votes, is Tears of the Kingdom. You go ahead. What do you make of this? Second most popular game on our list.
I mean, it should be number 0. I mean, I think that, I mean, it's really tough. This or Last of Us 2, I think, as for me, my favorite, and I would argue the best game of the decade. It's actually funny bringing this up just after Elden Ring. I think the last thing I was going to say about Elden Ring is that it's one of those long-standing, oh my god, they're doing it games. Like, they announced it years before. Holy shit, they're FromSoft making open world game. Like, it was legendary, like most anticipated game for so many years, and it delivered, right? And like, that is one of those games where it's like, it came out 9s and 10s across the board, winning game of the year, like selling a bajillion million copies. Like that is like, it's the perfect trajectory for a game. And for me, I think Tears of the Kingdom is another one of those where it isn't as big as Breath of the Wild. It is more controversial than Breath of the Wild, but for me, very subjectively, it was one of those games where its build up only got better until it came out. Is that the trailers were, and the information was kind of slow, whatever. They ramp it up a little bit before launch. Okay, here's the ideas. It's really going to make this game different. And then actually getting my hands on it, that's what really made the game sing for me. Is exploring it on its own terms and seeing the ways in which that I think it builds strongly upon Breath of the Wild. And I mean, I just think I think it's a really special game in that it's one of those ones where, at face value, you might see it as a just direct continuation sequel in a way that many people would criticize. Even some of the games we talked about today, of like, all right, you're doing the thing again. It's kind of true with Tears of the Kingdom, but it's also really not. And so I think that is what makes that game so special to me, is it straddles that perfect balance of familiarity of a game that I love, Breath of the Wild. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But it also has that surprise and delight factor that makes me really deeply resonate with certain games of, oh my god, I didn't expect to feel this way. I didn't expect to be able to do this. Because it has so many ideas that are its own, that you have to go hands-on, and you have to really play with it and experiment with it to realize the depth and breadth that it has. And I think that's part of why it is it is such a game that's talked about and revered so much. It's got so much more going on under the surface than is apparent at first, at like face value.
Yeah, I just think that this game is a really great example of a lot of Nintendo discourse being dumb, because like I just don't actually think that this game is that similar to Breath of the Wild. I think, and for me, that's partially why it doesn't work for me as well as Breath of the Wild. But I also think that that's part of what makes it special, because it uses the same map. Okay, whatever. It's not this, like, that's like the least remarkable thing about that game.
Sure.
And I think to the point you're making is like, yes, it has this same underpinning, but it finds a way, I think, to interpret it very differently and give a different and give a different type of player their Breath of the Wild experience. And I think that why these games continue to stand in conversation, and there's constantly a debate, oh, do you like Tears of the Kingdom, do you like Breath of the Wild? I think it's because they took that time to really say, okay, well, how can we take core ideas, freedom of exploration, player agency, sort of ingenious open-ended puzzle solving, and how can we like build a game that is like actually different than its predecessor, with the same bones.
Sure.
And so the games like sit alongside each other for me. Sure. It's not so much of a replacement. And you know, it'd be really interesting, or I'm really interested to see, rather, if we step far into the future. Like, I'm not even saying 2030, I'm saying 2040. how, like, which is the one that really really wins out in people's minds. I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't. I don't think it's clear cut either way. I think that people will make a definitive case for either, but I don't really know that I would so persuasively argue that Breath of the Wild is going to be that game, even though it's the one I like more.
Sure.
And vice versa for Tears of the Kingdom. I think that with time, these two games as companion pieces are really going to have an interesting life together.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's probably true. I, as I'm a massive fan of both games, but I am a bigger fan of Tears of the Kingdom. I do often find that I think that game gets the short end of the stick in terms of conversation, and we'll see if that is something that stays true for 15 years from now, whatever. But I think in terms of legacy, I would predict that in the same way that we talk about Hades and we talk about God of War, that the moment of each of those games' predecessors is what made that whole chapter of each of those series legacy. And so I see Tears of the Kingdom as one of those games that people really, really ride hard for. It's a Nintendo game. It's a Zelda game. These things really do stay around in conversation. But long term, by the end of the decade, I think it'll still be like one of those top 10 games of the decade things. But even longer term legacy, I think is probably a little bit harder for Tears of the Kingdom to really grab onto, given that Breath of the Wild is just the more popular game. It is the more defining game. It is the more impactful game in terms of the industry and iconography and popularity of the Switch and all of that. I'm for my standards pessimistic for the legacy of Tears of the Kingdom, but I don't think it will ever go down as anything less than a really truly excellent and very special game. But it's one that I'm happy to see maintain, even just a couple of years later, maintaining that like people still really do think about and love this game.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing you can't take away from it, right? I mean a lot of games in this list really give you a lot of ownership over your playing experience.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
And Tears of the Kingdom maybe more so than Breath of the Wild gives you that kind of ownership because it's just so flexible.
Yeah.
But our number one game here with 11 votes, far and away the winning game. Yeah. Skewed perhaps by the fact that we know a lot of RPG fans, of course, yes. But is Baldur's Gate 3. And you want to talk about a game that gives you ownership over your play experience. This is a beautiful example of that. I've never played it. I don't think I probably ever will, even though I'm flirting on a day to day with the idea of starting up the copy of Divinity 2 that I bought.
I can't imagine you playing Divinity 2 for more than, I would say, if you were a normal person, I'd say more than 80-90 minutes, right, for like a try of the game. Yeah. But I feel like you're gonna pop it in and something either gross or boring is gonna happen, and you're gonna turn it off after 15 minutes.
Maybe. Who knows? I still might turn it on, so I might give it a shot. But
I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I just I feel like I'm looking into your mind.
You don't want to do that. No one wants. You don't want to look in there.
I look in there and it's like the Divinity TGA trailer with like pigs and vomit and sex and death.
Yeah, that trailer's really fucked up. It really didn't do much for me. It really just unsettled me more than anything else.
Well, because you felt seen.
Yeah, it's like this is like this is my fucking dark and twisted mind. Like they made it into a video game. I have enough of that as is. But Tucker, Baldur's Gate 3. What do you think about this game? What do you think about this game? This is a game. Let me not let you answer yet. Yeah. I feel like this is a game that has sort of a surprisingly big reach. I have
totally.
Many friends that you wouldn't anticipate are playing a CRPG with Dungeons and Dragons rules governing its combat. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that are playing this game. I'm like, that's really interesting that you fuck with this like that. So there's no doubt.
It's surprisingly it's like a girlfriend game.
Yeah,
it's not in a bad way. In that my friend's girlfriend plays this game. My friend's sister plays this game, and I think that's excellent. I love the fact that female players are really getting into a lot of stuff that I would, at face value, I wouldn't expect. Like that's like biases speaking, but like I really do like, you're right. Like a lot of people who are not traditionally into a massive, deep game like this, really, really finding something special in it.
Yeah. term girlfriend game. We gotta get rid of that. I don't like that term.
Well,
I don't like that term.
It's specifically because one of the first people that I heard getting really into this game was my friend Joe's girlfriend.
Yes.
And like she was into it more than anyone else I knew. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I knew that she played like Stardew and like Phasmophobia or something like that. And I'm like, fucking Baldur's Gate, god dang. But I say that, and I really respect the game for resonating with people that I wouldn't expect. In that I am one of the most hardcore video game players that I know, and obviously just because of the tastes and biases that I have, I always saw Baldur's Gate, and even when I played a couple hours of it, as something that wasn't particularly appealing. I'm like, this is too complicated for me. This is too slow for me. The top down angle is really like hampering my ability to immerse myself in this. Like if it was Baldur's Gate 3 but it was the exact same game but the camera was lower, I think I'd fucking like it more. But if the combat was faster, like, but it's one of those other like benchmarks for the medium, really helping to define a studio that I think people will really pay a lot closer attention to now, bringing a series that was long-standing but certainly not as popular to a level of prominence that really I don't think anyone would have expected. And also just again, it's one of those like high benchmarks for like, holy fuck, they put a lot of time and effort into this. Like the breadth of that script, the like amount of hours of performance dialogue that each of the actors have to have, the variety in which that you can approach your self storytelling and get all sorts of different endings, and have the characters hate you or love you or anything in between. Like there's so much going on with that game that is also why it doesn't appeal to me, is because I like being told a story, not necessarily finding my own. But it is what makes that game as impressive as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge achievement. It's actually sort of like a shockingly huge achievement. I just you posed a question about how are these games going to live and continue on, and I had sort of alluded to this before, but I think this game sits alongside of Cyberpunk of like, this is a everybody's gonna have it type of game, because there's also just something to be said for the, I think, broad cultural interest in Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure. Interesting.
I think that like in this era we're in of like nerd culture being pop culture, I think D&D is like a key tenet of that. I think a lot of people play D&D, and so I think it's maybe more understandable than we would maybe appreciate. I've played D&D only a very little bit, and I didn't really fuck with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, neither did I.
There's just too much, like the combat is just like, it's so fucking. Oh, I can't do it. Like because here's the thing about a game like Baldur's Gate 3, right? Tucker, and Divinity 2. I think that like very reactive.
Which you bought.
Which I bought.
Clear, before you say this.
It's like really like the reactivity of those games and those worlds is super cool to me. Sure. Like I love in a game like Cyberpunk or like the little bits of other like Bethesda games that I've played, or Obsidian games that I've played, or KOTOR or the stuff. I love the way that I can help shape these stories and really have my own path through them. Choose your own adventure style, but it's just encumbered with all of this stuff that I have a low tolerance for, and it just seems that I think other people have a higher tolerance for the stuff I have a low tolerance for. But yeah, I wonder if with this next Divinity game, Larian will sort of become one of those Cyberpunk CD Projekt or FromSoft tier developers.
Yeah,
I think they probably will, but I would just love for them to continue to distill down the types of games they make. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think a lot of Larian fans want that to happen.
Oh,
so,
God, can you imagine?
That's not for me. That's for somebody else to have fun with, I think. Tucker, that's our list. Obviously, I have my list. Well, I want to share a couple things off of my list. You have your list. But what do you make of just, we've done this whole exercise. We've looked at all these most popular games. Are you happy with what our community has come up with here?
Yeah, I think that we really covered. I think we covered most of those big games of the decade.
Yeah.
I think, like I'm just looking through some of the last few years of games. I'm like, okay, what games do I feel like are missing? I think Balatro is one of those ones where it's like massive, defining. Just I think another one of those forever games that will always be relevant in some way. I think Helldivers 2 is probably one of those as well. I think some version of a Lethal Company friend swap type game is probably one of those defining games. Silk Song, actually, I'm surprised, is not among these.
I think we only got one vote for that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And then of course there are things that are more outside of our sphere and our community sphere of these more multiplayer focused games, or things like Genshin Impact, like games that do define this set of 5 years, half decade, but either are our favorite or aren't necessarily the best. But they're very popular.
Like I said, I really couched what we're doing here in the fact that this is a small sample size from a group of very hardcore gamers, because I think that this list is like not representative, with rare exception, of like what is actually defining of the decade. Like exactly to your point, I think you and I pride ourselves on trying to step outside of ourselves and try to understand what's actually popular. And like a lot of this shit's just not like where's the Roblox, where's the Fortnite, where's the fucking, as you're saying, I think Balatro is an interesting one to point out. Whereas of those games, did Phasmophobia come out this decade, or is that earlier? Then that's probably one to fit in there. So
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, we got a couple of votes for that. I don't know about Vampire Survivors. I feel like we have to see with that one. I feel like Balatra's success was like immediately codified by a million games taking on its sort of number multiplying shit. And Vampire, we'll see. I feel like here's what I think about Vampire Survivors. I feel like Vampire Survivors is kind of like a PUBG thing, of like huge, cool, but where's the Fortnite to it? What's its Fortnite? I feel like it needs something like that,
Maybe.
But the other thing I just think is neat about this list is there's a lot of 2020 games. I think that's a good sign for like the resilience of those games. My personal list has 2 2020 games. All my other stuff is newer.
Yeah, so you want to go through yours?
Yeah, let's go through mine. Last of Us and Cyberpunk obviously already on the list, so no need to talk about those further. Citizen Sleeper is on this list. This is a game that's had a really big impact on me. I think it sort of does, I was talking about in Baldur's Gate, that gives me that reactivity, that ownership over my story, but it's not.
Yeah, but that game's only 4 hours long.
Yes, and it's only concerned with my choices. It's not encumbered with too many superfluous systems. Pikmin 4 is on my list. Mario Wonder is on my list. Here's a peculiar one. Can't believe it's only got 1 vote. Just kidding. F-Zero 99 is on my list. I'm a huge fan of that game. I've played.
You're not beating the allegations, by the way.
What are the allegations?
Then everyone only likes Nintendo.
I don't say even allegations, just a fact. I don't really like if Nintendo didn't make video games, I'd play like.
But also, I want you to think about what that phrase means. You're not beating the allegation. It's always a fact. It's always something that's like evidently true. That's the point of the phrase.
My favorite game of this decade, Tucker, so far. I'm calling it right now. Donkey Kong Bonanza, favorite game of the decade.
Jesus Christ! Holy shit!
That's in there, of course. Only person to have this my favorite game of the decade, because I'm supposed to adhere to social convention and say it didn't live up to the hype or whatever. But Metroid Prime 4 is in my list. Mario Kart World is in my list, and then my most intriguing pick here, perhaps Destiny 2: The Final Shape is here. We did a little bit of litigation. Can this count? Destiny 2 began in a previous decade, but this is in keeping with a lot of the games that are like actually popular among just the world.
Not Destiny.
No, but it's not the start date that matters. It's
of course.
These games that live on forever, and the only forever game that I really put any heart or soul into is Destiny. Mm-hmm. I don't even think Destiny 2 is my favorite iteration of Destiny. I think it's somewhere back in Destiny 1 days. But Destiny 2, The Final Shape, I do think was tremendous. And it's the only game like this that I'll continue to come back to for expansions to sort of play in my own way. I'm not like a Destiny freak by any means. I'm like maybe the most hardcore casual player you can get. I'll come back, I'll play the expansions, I'll do a couple strikes, I'll do this, I'll do that. But I'm not fucking grinding for anything. I don't know. But yeah, those are my 10.
Awesome. Yeah. Mine has Metaphor, ReFantazio on it. Number 10. Number 9, Pokemon Legends Arceus. We didn't get a chance to talk about. We love that game. I had Concord on my list.
Good.
Just want to give that a pregnant pause there.
Of course.
So I can impregnate all of you with a pause. Animal Crossing New Horizons. Yakuza Like a Dragon. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Nice.
God of War Ragnarok. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And The Last of Us Part 2. Now, we talked about like half of those already.
Yeah.
I don't really know if there's any of those I really want to dive too much more into. Like if you know me, if you watch this channel, you know that I do mean it when I have Concord on my games that define the first half of the decade for me. I do think that I made this case before. I think that the fact that it was shut down so quickly is actually part of the reason why I connect to it so much. I loved what I played of it, and I was excited for it when it was coming out. But I will never have anything but the honeymoon phase with Concord.
Sure.
Which is interesting to think about, but that I think helped cement it as me as one of the biggest fans of the game, and still continuing to try to talk about it after it's now been gone for over a year. That is something that has really defined my relationship to games. Obviously in just the last year, but for the 2020s, me trying to find things that I really champion, and I think also being unafraid to defend something that I know will get me shit, is because I don't think there's a game that, I don't know, maybe Dustborn, but like a game of the last 5 years that you could say you're a fan of and you would get the most hate for. I think it's probably Concord.
It's up there for sure.
Is there anything else that we wanted to say?
No, I don't think so. I just think it's been a really great 5 years of games. I was saying earlier, there's a couple that I knew were immediately going on my list. Immediately getting Last of Us.
What were those for?
Last of Us, Cyberpunk, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and then probably Mario Wonder.
Oh, sure.
And then I was like, okay, well, what are those other 6 gonna be? But I was not, I was not lacking games I could have slot in there. I've been very happy with what I've been playing. I don't really feel like I've had a dull year.
Oh no, me neither.
In this time. So yeah, I'll be very excited to see what the future holds for the next half of the decade, and then maybe we can do this exercise again when I'm 30 years old, and we can see what stuck around and what what enters, because I think that many of the most defining games are yet to come.
That's interesting to think about,
like a GTA 6 and things of that stature. So
excellent. All right, bye.